or welcome back to my channel. This is my March wrap up. So I read 14 books in the month of March, all over the gamut, like very widespread reading here. I should say 1, 2, 3. I think 6 of the 14 books I read were for 2 very specific videos, which I've already kind of gone over them, so I'll link them in the cards above. So I'm just going to briefly touch on those, and then the rest of them, like, I'll give you, what they're about. So the first book that I finished this month was An Impossible Imposter, which is number 7 in the Veronica Speedwell series by Deanna Raybourn. I was obsessed with that series. Definitely a Katie Coulson ruined my life type of situation. She and Olivia introduced me to that series through reading sprints, and I devoured it as fast as my library holds would come in. Absolutely loved it. The series isn't over. The 7th one is just the most recent book, and it literally came out last month, so we're at least a year away from book 8, which is very heartbreaking, especially considering the cliffhanger they left us on. But I don't want to spoil anything for those of you all who haven't read it, but I would say if you love a female and male duo, lots of banter, will they, won't they, but their potential romance, and I guess you can say romance, isn't the main part of the story. It almost gives like alternate Holmes and Watson vibes a little bit. I really enjoyed it. I've heard it compared to The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, like those kind of vibes. I haven't read that yet, so I don't know if it's an accurate comp, but I hear that a lot. So if that's your thing, 10 out of 10 recommend the Veronica Speedwell series. The first book is called A Curious Beginning. The next thing I read is another in the kind of cozy mystery genre, which I guess Veronica Speedwell is kind of cozy. It's it was Granny's Got a Gun, and it's this first book in the Secret Agent Granny series by Harper Lynn. This book was super short. I want to say it was like 200 pages maybe, because the audio was for like 3 hours, but listening on 2 times speed, I finished it in like 90 minutes. So, super fun. It's this retired grandma, used to be in the CIA, and someone in her book club dies at book club. And she's got to figure out, like, who else in this room, or who in this room was the reason this person died, and, like, why. Without blowing the fact that she used to be in the CIA, because despite her being retired, she still doesn't share that. She does the classic line, like, well, if I told them, I'd have to kill them. So, I just remember there being some funny one-liners and stuff. It wrapped up kind of weird. It just kind of felt like the author didn't want to write anymore, and so they just ended the book in a way. The ending felt a little lazy, but it was a good time. And I would say if you're just looking for a palate cleanser, kind of like a fun little series to read, it's been a good time. I just downloaded the 2nd and 3rd books actually to continue on with it. And then the next couple books I got into my nonfiction bag. She's back. Better than ever. The first one I read is The Other Dr Gilmer by Benjamin Gilmer. It says 2 men, a murder, and an unlikely fight for justice. And this is a story of Ben Gilmer, who goes to this small town to be a doctor at this clinic in which the previous Gilmer, who I think it was Vince Gilmer, went away for murdering his dad. And so he's dealing with the, like, it's weird that I'm in this town with the same name as this guy. And some of his patients were like, oh my god, is he back? Who let him out of prison? A lot of his patients have really fond memories of him and think of him in that way. And so you just kind of go through the experience of him trying to figure it out. And eventually he does go to the prison to meet Dr. Gilmer and see if his, I don't want to say an alibi, but kind of, like, he thinks that there's a very specific reason the murder happened and that it wasn't a cold-blooded situation. And so you kind of go into that. I would definitely check the trigger warnings and content warnings for the book if, true crime's not your thing, because it's definitely a true crime novel, so much so that Sarah Koenig makes an appearance because she did an episode of This American Life on this guy. During the book, actually, he talks about it. And then the next one I read also needs every content warning known to man. I'm talking a little life level list of content warnings. It's Sex Cult Nun by Faith Jones, and it's this subtitle is Breaking Away from the Children of God, a Wild Radical Religious Cult. I don't think I rated this anywhere because I marked my reading on both Storygraph and Goodreads, and I don't think I rated this one. If I were, I would say just for the quality of it, it's a 4-star. But outside of that, it's very hard to rate, mostly because, like, you're following her I say even following her. She's retelling you the story in this very clinical manner while telling you some of the most horrific and grotesque things that can happen to children in this cult, and just like their behavior and like the uprooting of the kids, and they're all over the place. And also, if tapeworms bother you, there's like a thing about worms. Ugh. Maybe it was roundworms. I don't know. I hate worms. Ugh. Okay. But yeah, I would say it was a good educational thing if you're into learning about religious cults, but the content is gruesome to me in some places. And I don't mean gruesome like bloody, like whatever, but like just, I don't know, you're actively reading the like innocence of a child taken away on a page. It's a lot. It's a lot. So after reading that and feeling like the world was a dumpster fire, I needed some uplifting, you know, needed to feel some happiness in the world again. So what did I do? I slid over into romance and I read The Fastest Way to Fall by Denise Williams, and I fell in love. 5-star romance, 100%. So this is a story of Britta, who is working at, I don't think she's either working at like a magazine or like a BuzzFeed type website, and or she works for a lifestyle website. So yeah, kind of like a BuzzFeed, maybe Goop crossover, if you will. And she and her coworker are tasked with reviewing these 2 really popular fitness apps, and figuring out like, and they basically like blog their experiences, and they even start like a hashtag on Twitter where people can kind of keep up with what's going on through there. And through their experiences of doing this, Britta falls in love with this guy, Wes, who not only is her trainer in the app, but also is the CEO of that company. And then just mess ensues from there. But it was just good. It was wholesome. It was wonderful. I just really enjoyed the way that Denise made the like 3rd act conflict real. So many times you read romances and that 3rd act conflict is just bullshit. Like there's no reason for it. You're like, just let the happily ever after happen. But because of the way that their story so much revolves around both of their jobs, it was just a very natural feeling of like a 3rd act problem. And a realistic one as you're reading the story. Like it just didn't feel forced. It didn't feel unnecessary even. Like it was great. And then after that I read a young adult, which I don't normally do. But I kept hearing people rave about this on Twitter. And so I picked it up. It's This Golden State by Merritt Weisenberg. It's about this family that lives kind of undercover, if you will. I'll read the synopsis because it's very, it'll get you if this is your kind of thing. It says, the Winslow family lives by 5 principles. No one can know your real name. Don't stay in one place too long. If you sense anything wrong, go immediately to the meeting spot. Keep our family together is everything. And we wish we could tell you who we are, but we can't. Please don't ask. Like, what? And so you're following Poppy, who is their oldest child. I want to say when the story starts, she's got to be around like 16, 17. And it says, Poppy doesn't know why her family has been running her whole life, but she does know that there are dire consequences if they're ever caught. And the whole time, like, she's low-key trying to figure out who her parents are, like why they're running, but also you are trying to figure it out, and all of the obvious things keep coming up and you're like, no, it's not that, and like they get debunked as they're going along. And so what really kept me in this was trying to figure out like, who the fuck are these people? And it was a great ride. It was a great ride. It is kind of dark, but it's a good time. And I can see why I almost feel like new adult is the wrong term for this, because, and maybe it's just because I feel like new adult has been used so much for like an excuse for like typical YA writers to just write smutty romances, but new adult is literally meant to be for new adults. So like, you know, your 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old people who are, you know, maybe don't feel like YA is the right spot for them, but like a traditional adult book hasn't been great for them either. It's supposed to be that kind of like middle sweet spot. And to me, this book felt more new adult than it did YA. And I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. And that's not, you know, a dig to YA. YA has its place, has its purpose. But for me, someone who's going to be 31 this year, it's not written for me, right? Like, it's just not meant for me in that way. So I usually try not to critique YAs on doing YA things, like having, you know, a less mature voice and poor character decisions and things, because normally they're following teenagers with poor decision making, because that's what teenagers do. So this one was, to me, felt more new adult than it did YA, just because of the way. I think part of it is the situation, like Poppy's kind of forced to be an adult prematurely, but also part of it too is even just in her stubbornness and rebellion, in a way, she's still, for the most part, making pretty adult decisions. So after that, I read The Love Hypothesis, which I feel like, do I need to give you a synopsis of this? Like, it's everywhere. I didn't hate it. I thought I was going to hate. I thought this was going to be a 2-star read for me. And you're like, Rebecca, why the hell would you pick up a book if you think it's going to be a 2-star read for you? Well, I picked it up because I was doing that video that was an Instagram filter chooses, you know, my reading. And some of my books weren't coming in fast enough, so I picked this up because it's like, well, this is a popular book talk book, which is what that Instagram filter was based off of. And so I grabbed it for that, and my book club had just read it, and I missed the meeting because I couldn't get a copy of the book in time to read it. But basically, it's a Raylo fanfic. I gave it 3.5 stars. The smut was good. That's what gave it a 1.5 stars, honestly. After that, I read The Verifiers by Jane Peck. This was a cool concept to me, mostly because you don't ever actually think these agencies exist, and maybe they do, I don't know. But, excuse me, you follow Claudia Lynn, who is this girl who is kind of the black sheep of her family a little bit, and she's trying to find her place at work, and she feels kind of like the black sheep there as well. And their job as the verifiers is to verify whatever information a client brings to them. So if you think your boyfriend's cheating, they go out and verify whether or not he's cheating, come back with proof, do all that kind of stuff. It's like that kind of agency. And that's exactly what happens is this woman shows up, is like, I've been on several dates with this man. It feels too good to be true. I also feel like something's off. Can you verify him, basically? And they do that, and then that woman dies, not 2 days after they give her the information. And then you're just sent on this roller coaster of like, how did she die? What's going on? Is she who she says she is? Who's this other woman who shows up saying that, no, her name is my name, that was my sister using my identity? And you're like, what's going on? There were certain points where the book just kind of dragged on and felt like it wasn't going anywhere. But overall, it was a pretty good story, and I think it's a setup for a series. I haven't checked to see if there's going to be a sequel, but just the way it ended kind of gave me those vibes. So I ended up giving that 3.5 stars. After that, I read The Bell Jar, which again, talked about in that Instagram filter, chooses my reading book. I gave it 3 stars. And then I read the Girl Meets Duke series, which, again, another video that I've done already, but great historical romance. Definitely can tell that it's one of those foundational historical romances for the way they're written today. I say that as if these books are super old. They're not super old, but the first one was written in 2017, and honestly, it feels like it was written in 2011 a little bit. It was a good story, but just some of like the build up and the way the pieces were put together just felt a little elementary for the genre and the way it is now. So if you're a person who like actively reads new releases in historical romances, you might just kind of be like, it was okay. But I can definitely see where it started the trend of a more feminist approach to it, because our heroines in each of the stories all for the most part either worked on their own or have lived kind of outside of society's margins in some way. So they're not your stereotypical like damsel in distress meeting a duke, whatever, or like your stereotypical highborn woman in that way where you're just kind of used to that in the way the society's set up. So I did appreciate that, and it definitely kept me in the series. And then I slid back into nonfiction for my book club, actually. We all read Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. Can't recommend it enough. A 5-star book. I think this is a really great way for people who want to expand feminism from the concept of, you know, the way we're marketed things like equal pay, family health leave, or like medical leave, you know, a uniform maternity, paternity leave, and even, you know, having that as like a national standard. All of those things are important, but they often are looked at from a very white middle class lens. And although those people are affected, there's an entire, you know, I say entire group, several groups of people that are left out from that. Because when we talk about the wage gap and they're like, oh, a woman makes 87 cents to a man's dollar. No, a white woman makes 87 cents to a man's dollar. If you ask a black woman, a Latinx woman, or a, you know, Asian woman, like all that, it just drops. It just continues to drop. Ask a Native woman, it all continues to drop. And I love the way that Mickey Kendall was like, race and class play such a bigger part in feminism than we are marketed it to. Here, let me show you how. But I also love that she didn't explain everything in this book. And I know that sounds kind of weird when you're thinking about a nonfiction book you're going in to learn for. But she keeps coming back to, I can only speak for my community in this way and provide the data I have for other communities. But like, together to be better, we have to kind of keep going out and working on this together. So I feel like what she did was gave you prompts for a research project, if you will, and was like, here's how, you know, equal pay affects Indigenous women, or here's how domestic violence factors into feminism, and here's how food insecurity is a feminist issue, and things like that, while giving you the basis of each of those topics and some really great things to build your foundation on, while also recommending that you branch your own views out and look at your community and how each of these groups are affected. Or these particular topics, you know, maybe it doesn't affect your city. Maybe you guys don't have food deserts in your area, but there are, say, 20 minutes from you in like the larger city over. She just talks about a lot of those things and how easy it is for us to feel removed from certain things, especially if you live in a more privileged area or have had that kind of privilege growing up. So I definitely recommend this. This is one of those books where I think it's a really great opportunity to take it a chapter at a time. And in fact, let me pull my copy out. Nonfiction. So here, ooh, sorry, I gave you a shaky cam. So here's my copy. Look at all those tabs. I ran out of tabs at the end. I highlighted everything. And each chapter, I would say, is between, let's see, that one started on page 3. I would say they're between like 9 and 15 pages, which like isn't a ton, but it's just so much content on each page. So there are some pages in here where I only highlighted, you know, maybe one line. And then there are others where I was like, well, I'm gonna end up highlighting almost the whole page if I'm not careful. Like, look at this. This is like her talking about the missing and murdered between like Indigenous women and trans people. She covers everything. She covers everything, and she did a fantastic job. And I definitely recommend checking that out if you haven't, especially if you are trying to expand your reading horizons and you're not really sure where to look. I think that's a great place. She also does a great job of listing all of her references in the back, so some of them reference other books and could, you know, lead you down that kind of pathway. And so the last book that I read in March was The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. I've kind of been feeling the need to get back into like a sci-fi, urban fantasy situation. This was not fantasy at all, but I've just been feeling the urge to go back in that direction. And so I picked up The Luminous Dead. I think I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. It was like 3.5. The concept I really enjoyed. The execution, not so much. This is about a woman named Jair who basically lies her way into a job. There are these kind of like, I'm not really sure how to explain their world building, because I guess there is a little fantasy in this, in the way that like, it's not set on Earth. There, she regularly talks about going like off-world and digging through other worlds. But what these people do, and like there are multiple companies that do this, is that you go on these like expeditions, dive down or like burrow down in these kind of caves and look for, you know, whatever you're looking for. I'd imagine there's the equivalent, because she kind of talks about certain things, and I forget what they're called now, but it's the same equivalent as like going and digging for gold or oil or whatever commodity. And she's on one of these expeditions, and as she's doing it, she finds out that her base camp is only one person, whose name is M. And M is doing this because of some very personal reasons. And Jair, as she's going through, is starting to figure out, like, this is not a normal job. This is why they were willing to pay so much money to kind of go through. And I don't know, it's very dark, it's very meandering, it's very slow. So if you are into like slower stories, you want to be like in an atmospheric feeling, it's great for that. I was looking for a little bit more, I don't want to say action, I was looking for a little bit more suspense if it was going to be that slow. Because then it's like, if it's building up to something, then like we'll kind of get there. And the end was very, I don't know if I'd say it was left up to interpretation, but it was just very easy to get lost and not really know where it was going, and I just didn't love that, and I also just felt like it was a little too long. I want to say this book is like a little over 400 pages. Yeah, it's 432 pages, and I was like, this is like a solid 75 pages too long. But I did, generally speaking, enjoy my time reading it. I just wanted a little bit more. So that is every book that I've read in the month of March. Would love to know what you read, and if you have any recommendations based on the things I shared that I read and enjoyed, would love to hear them in the comments. And with that being said, I will see you in another video soon. Goodbye.